I was already regretting the extra miles. What was supposed to be a scenic shortcut had turned into a thorny mess of tangled branches and sunburned silence. My boots were caked in mud, sweat trickled down my back, and my drone battery had just died. Perfect. That hike influencer life I posted about on Instagram. It wasn't looking so glamorous when I was bent under a low-hanging pine, trying not to get stabbed in the eye by nature itself. I paused to check my GPS again. No signal. Just a spinning blue dot and a taunting red line of where I should have been 2 miles ago. I muttered under my breath and shoved the phone in my pack. That's when I saw the barbed wire. Rusty, stretched across a sagging wooden post line, cutting straight through the brush like a warning. I squinted. There were no signs, no clear trail markers. But I was tired, dehydrated, and too stubborn to backtrack. Private land, I mumbled. Probably nothing out here but cows and dust. I put one hand on the fence to hop it. A sharp snort behind me stopped everything. Then came the unmistakable sound of hoofbeats. Slow, deliberate. A rhythm that seemed to echo across the dry earth and straight into my chest. I turned around, and there he was, a man on horseback, tall, built, dressed in worn jeans, boots streaked with dried mud, a faded red flannel rolled at the sleeves. He wore a wide-brimmed Stetson that shaded most of his face, but not enough to hide the strong jawline, the day-old stubble, and eyes that made my knees forget their job. He didn't speak at first, just looked me over. His gaze started at my boots, paused at my shorts, then landed on the small vlogging camera dangling from my chest rig. "Well," he drawled, voice slow as honey and low like thunder, "ain't every day I find a city boy trespassing on my fence line." "I didn't mean to trespass," I said quickly. "I thought the trail curved this way." "It don't," he replied. His tone wasn't angry, more amused. He tipped his hat back a little, revealing more of his face. He was annoyingly handsome, sun-kissed, confident in that effortless, I work with my hands way. "You're about 3 miles off anything resembling a trail." My throat was dry. "You own this land." "Sure do. And, is it okay if I just pass through? I'll be careful," he smirked. "Not unless you got a death wish." My brows raised. "Excuse me. Cougar sightings past week. Big one. Took out 2 goats and my neighbor's dog." He nudged his horse forward a step. "Ain't safe to be walking this stretch alone, especially smellin' like sunscreen and city sweat." I blinked. "I don't smell okay, maybe a little." He chuckled, then let the silence linger. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. The horse shifted beneath him, snorting softly. "You got somewhere to stay?" he asked. "I had a campsite planned." "Scrap it, you're common with me." He reached down and patted the saddle behind him. "One horse, don't get picky." "You're serious." He cocked a brow. "Dead serious, unless you'd rather wait here and see what shows up after sunset." I swallowed. Pride was telling me to push back, but instincts and maybe something else said yes. So I stepped forward, hesitated, then climbed up behind him. The leather saddle creaked as I tried to find balance, and suddenly I was pressed flush against his back. His body was warm, solid. He turned his head slightly. "You ever ridden double before, city boy?" I cleared my throat. "No." His hands found my waist as he guided me into position, his grip firm and unhurried. I could feel the strength in his fingers, the surety in the way he adjusted me like I was luggage on a trail ride. "Well," he murmured, voice brushing against my ear, "hold still, 'cause this trail's rough. And this ass of yours is real distracting." I froze. "I what?" He chuckled, deep and low. One hand casually slid along my hip before returning to the reins. Then he leaned in a little closer, his breath tickling my neck as he whispered with a lazy drawl, "Ah, so yummy." I didn't know what to do with that. My brain short-circuited. Was he just being playful? Or did he mean it? I sat a little straighter, my heart drumming like mad, unsure whether to laugh, jump off, or lean back into him. His body moved with the horse's rhythm, steady and strong behind me. Every few seconds, his knee or chest would brush mine, subtle but electric. He didn't say anything else for a while. Just rode, steering us through narrow bends and over small creeks, the reins creaking softly between his gloved hands. I stayed quiet. mostly to keep from blurting out something ridiculous like, "Are you always this flirty with lost hikers?" But part of me didn't want him to stop. Whatever this was, teasing, banter, warning, flirtation, it was working. I felt the tension between us like a stretched wire, and for the first time in a long time, getting lost didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like the start of something I hadn't expected at all, something I wasn't sure I wanted to walk away from. We rode in slow. The sun hung low over the hills, staining everything gold: the grass, the wooden fence posts, even the edges of Weston's wide-brimmed hat. The land stretched out in all directions, wild and open, framed by distant cattle and oak trees swaying like sleepy giants. His ranch came into view near the base of a rise, a modest wooden house with a slanted tin roof, weathered porch, and an old red barn beside it. Nothing flashy, nothing modern, just clean, solid quiet. It looked like it had been there forever, holding its breath in the middle of nowhere. "This yours?" I asked, craning my neck. "All of it," Weston said simply, pulling the horse to a slow stop near the barn. Since my old man passed, he dismounted in one smooth motion, then turned to help me down. His hands landed on my hips again, firm, effortless, and when my boots hit the ground, he didn't step back right away. "You good?" I nodded, maybe a little too quickly. "Yeah, thanks." His eyes lingered for a beat before he looked away and walked toward the house, boots crunching over gravel. The front door creaked when he opened it, and the smell hit me right away: cedar, dust, leather, something like tobacco that clung to the wood. It wasn't messy, but it wasn't polished either. A man's place, a quiet one. Inside, a chocolate lab lifted its head from a woven rug and gave a lazy tail thump. "That's Boone," Weston said, scratching behind the dog's ears. "He don't bite." "Much?" I knelt down and gave Boone a hello. His muzzle was gray, and his eyes half shut as he leaned into my touch like an old man nodding off in a rocking chair. Weston motioned toward a small table near the kitchen. "You can drop your stuff there." I slid off my backpack and unclipped my camera rig. "Is there a spot I can charge this? My drone battery's dead." He glanced at the bundle of wires and blinking lights like I'd just handed him a baby alien. "What the hell's a gimbal?" I laughed. "It keeps the camera steady." "Ah, sounds like something that don't belong on a horse," I snorted. "Yeah, well, neither do I, apparently." He smirked, then grabbed 2 beers from the fridge. "Reckon we both survived the ride." He handed me one. "Cheers, city boy." I took the bottle and clinked it against his. "To not getting mauled." He headed outside after that, saying something about firewood. I used the moment to poke around just a little. The house had character: boot scuffs on the floor, old photos in wooden frames, worn cushions on the couch. A coat rack near the door held one weathered jacket and a dusty ball cap. There was a slowness to everything, like time here didn't rush. I went to the bathroom to wash my face and swapped my sweat-drenched hiking shirt for a clean tee from my pack. When I came back into the living room, Weston was just stepping in, arms full of split firewood. He stopped in the doorway when he saw me. I caught the shift in his eyes, that flicker, that pause before he looked away and dropped the logs near the hearth. "Warmer than expected for this time of year," I said, trying to fill the silence. "Sure is," he muttered, brushing sawdust from his flannel. "Still chilly at night." I moved to the window. Outside, the wind rolled across the grass like waves, bending the stalks until they shimmered silver in the fading light. "You're not what I expected," Weston said behind me. I turned. "Oh," he leaned against the wall, bottle in hand. "Figured a city hiker like you would be whining by now, complaining about bugs, no cell service, rough trail. I mean, I did get stabbed by a pine branch," he chuckled. "But you didn't whine." "I save that for my followers," I said, half joking. "Can't ruin the brand image." He tilted his head. "Brand?" "Yeah, I'm an outdoor content creator. Hiking, gear reviews, travel wrecks. I document stuff." Weston looked skeptical. "You make a living off posting photos of trees." I shrugged. "Photos, videos, blog posts. People like watching someone else go on adventures. Makes them feel like they're out there too." He took another swig of beer. "World's changed." It has, a quiet settled in. Not awkward, just different, heavy in its own way. I stepped closer. What about you? Always been out here, he nodded slowly. Born here, grew up roppin' calves, mendin' fences, gettin' sunburned, went off for a bit, college, tried livin' in Austin, didn't stick. Why not? He looked toward the fire. Too loud. Too many people who talk without sayin' a damn thing, I smiled. Yeah, I know that type. Boone snored softly in the corner. Weston stood. You hungry? I blinked. Actually, yeah. Dinner was simple, grilled chicken, skillet potatoes, and cornbread from a cast iron pan that looked older than me. We ate at the table by the window, watching the last of the light fade into purple sky. Neither of us said much during the meal, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was companionable. Like we both knew the words weren't the important part. Afterward, Weston poured 2 more drinks. We sat on the porch as the wind picked up, the rafters creaking slightly overhead. Crickets chirped. Somewhere out in the dark, an owl called low and long. Nice out here, I said quietly. Yep. You ever get lonely? He didn't answer right away. Sometimes, but I'd rather feel alone out here than crowded somewhere else. I nodded. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. What? He shook his head. Just thinkin'. About. He stared into his glass, not sure yet. I let the moment hang. Weston finally stood and stretched, muscles shifting under his flannel. Guest room's full of junk. You're better off tackin' the couch. That's fine. He paused, watching me just a second too long. Good night, city boy, night cowboy. He walked down the hall, boots soft on old floorboards. I sat back in the quiet, the warmth of the porch light humming around me, Boone asleep at my feet, the wind whispering through the open land. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I needed to post about it. I just wanted to feel it. The house was quiet after dinner. Boone had claimed the entire rug with an old man's sigh, paws twitching now and then in dreamland. I stacked my empty plate in the sink and turned around to find Weston leaning against the doorway with 2 glasses in his hands. He held one out. You drink whiskey, city boy. I do when it's offered like that, he smirked. Good answer. We moved back to the porch. The night had deepened. Stars dusted the sky in lazy clusters, and the only sound was the rustling of trees and the creak of the old porch swing when I sat down. Weston took the chair beside me, boots crossed, glass in hand. The porch light cast soft gold over his profile, sharpening the curve of his jaw and catching the dust in his stubble. He looked carved from the same land he lived on, rough-edged, grounded, real. He tilted his head toward me. So what brings a man like you out this far, other than bad directions? I swirled the whiskey, watching the amber catch fire in the light. Honestly, I needed to disappear for a while, recharge, figure out what the hell I'm doing. He didn't push, just waited. I broke up with someone, I admitted. 2 months ago. We lived together for 2 years. He said I was too restless, always chasing something. Weston took a sip, then said quietly, sounds like he wanted to clip your wings. Yeah, I stared out at the hills. So I decided to do the opposite. I packed my gear and hit the road. Was supposed to be this big solo reset, clean air, trails, space. And instead you got thorns and trespassing charges, Weston said with a crooked smile. Exactly. He looked thoughtful. Heartbreak'll make you do funny things, good things sometimes. I glanced over. Speaking from experience, he nodded once. I was with someone few years back, city guy like you, met at a farmer's market of all places. He was taking photos of vegetables for a magazine. I was selling peppers. That made me laugh. That sounds absurd. Yeah, well, it was. What happened? Weston shifted in his seat, gaze fixed somewhere past the tree line. He liked the way I lived at first, said it felt real. But the quiet got to him, the dirt under his nails, the way the wind talks louder than people out here. Eventually he packed up and left. He took a long sip. Didn't blame him. Some folks need noise, I just need sky. I swallowed that one a little slower than my whiskey. There was a silence between us, not heavy, not awkward, just full. Like the air had weight now. I found myself watching him more closely, the way he refilled my glass without asking, the way his shoulder brushed mine when he leaned forward to set the bottle down. He didn't pull back fast, didn't apologize, just let it happen. I thought being out here alone would make me feel free, I said softly, but it kind of just made me realize how much I hate sleeping alone. Weston's voice was quiet, steady. Freedom ain't always comfortable. Another silence, but this one buzzed. My skin felt warmer than it should have. The stars looked closer than they had 20 minutes ago. He looked over at me, and I caught something different in his eyes, not just that teasing glint from earlier, but something deeper. Unspoken. Curious? You ever wonder, he said, if maybe we make things too complicated in the city, like maybe love's supposed to be quiet, simple? I nodded. Yeah, but simple still takes guts. We didn't say much after that, just sat. At one point I felt the heat of his leg against mine. I didn't shift away. He tapped his fingers on the side of his glass. Ain't much traffic out here. I turned toward him. Nope, just hearts beating loud enough to hear. His eyes searched mine. Then his hand reached out, slow, deliberate, and rested gently on my arm. Not possessive, not demanding, just grounding. Like he was checking if I was really there. I didn't pull away, didn't flinch. I just sat there, letting his touch settle, feeling the warmth of it travel up through skin and muscle like a slow flame. His thumb moved slightly, not even a stroke, just a presence. I don't do this often, he said. Neither do I. Another beat. Should probably let you sleep, he murmured. Probably. But neither of us stood. The night stretched long and still, and somehow that silence was the loudest thing I'd heard in months. After another round of whiskey and a few lazy yawns, Weston stood from the porch and stretched. The night had settled into something heavy and warm, pressing down from all directions. Even Boone hadn't moved from his spot, lost to dog dreams and porch breezes. You should get some sleep, Weston said, his voice a little huskier now. Tomorrow's supposed to be hotter than the devil's boot heel. You got a guest room, he snorted. Yeah, but it's more like a storage closet with aspirations. Saddle racks, boots, old feed bags. You wouldn't survive it, I gave a small grin. Couch it is. Inside, he grabbed a blanket from the linen closet and tossed it across the living room with surprising aim. I caught it barely. Comfy enough, he asked, standing a few feet away. I'll live. I tugged the blanket around my shoulders. You've got good taste in whiskey, but your hospitality rating's dropping. He chuckled and stepped forward to hand me a pillow. Our fingers brushed just a moment, skin on skin, warm and unspoken. It should have been nothing. But it wasn't. Neither of us moved, not right away. He looked down at my hand as if memorizing the shape of it. I looked up at his mouth. The silence roared. Then Weston stepped back, clearing his throat. Well, holler if you need anything. Thanks, Cowboy. He nodded once and disappeared down the hallway. Sleep didn't come. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the couch springs. Maybe it was the memory of his hand on my arm earlier, or the way his shirt had clung to his back when he chopped wood, or how the night air still smelled faintly of cedar, leather, and something uniquely him. I tossed the blanket aside after an hour, pulled on my hoodie, and slipped out the front door. The sky was moonless, thick with stars. I followed the worn dirt path toward the barn. Somewhere close, an owl hooted. A few cows shifted in the distance, but otherwise the world held its breath. The barn door was already open a crack. I stepped inside and stopped. There, in the dim glow of a single bulb swinging from the rafter, stood Weston, shirtless, his back to me. Muscles curved beneath tan skin, shadows sliding across the dips of his spine as he brushed down his horse with slow, methodical strokes. The horse twitched an ear but stayed calm, as if used to his quiet presence. His rhythm was hypnotic: hand, brush, silence. Hand, brush, silence. I didn't mean to stare, but I did. Weston turned halfway, sensing me. Couldn't sleep, he asked, his voice low. Too quiet, I said. He gave a soft laugh. Told you, out here it's the silence that'll get you. I stepped closer, stopping just beside the stall. The wood was warm from the horse's breath, the air damp with hay and dust and something else, the kind of tension you couldn't name without ruining it. You always brush horses at midnight, I asked. Sometimes helps me think. I nodded slowly. What are you thinking about now? He stopped brushing. Then he turned to face me fully. His chest rose and fell, slow and steady. He held the brush in one hand but didn't move. His eyes searched mine like they were digging for permission. When I said you were distracting, Weston said quietly, I wasn't lying. I swallowed hard. He stepped closer, not fast, not hesitant, just deliberate. The air thickened between us. Every breath became a choice. I didn't think you meant it, I whispered. I did. The space between us collapsed, inch by inch. Now I could see the way his collarbone dipped, the small scar on his shoulder, the flecks of sawdust still clinging to his forearms. Our faces were inches apart. My breath hitched. His lips parted just slightly. This was it. Almost. Almost then, Weston pulled back. He exhaled hard, turned away, and set the brush down on a hook with too much force. I don't bring folks here to play pretend, he said, jaw tight. This place, it's not for passing flings or one-night stories. I've done that before. I'm not doing it again. The words stung, not because he was wrong, but because he was afraid I was. I stepped forward and said, softer now, then don't pretend. He stopped, didn't turn around, just stood there, hands braced on the wooden stall, shoulders taut. I don't know what this is, I continued. I don't have the answers, but I'm not here to mess around, Weston. I didn't fake a broken GPS just to flirt with a cowboy in the woods. He let out a short breath, maybe a laugh, or maybe a sigh. For a moment, I thought he might turn back to me, say something, reach, but he didn't. He pushed off the stall, walked to the door, and paused there. The barest glance over his shoulder, get some sleep. And then he was gone, just like that. The barn felt colder after he left, even with the horse breathing soft and steady behind me. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding, breath shallow. The kiss hadn't happened, but the fire. The fire was burning just fine. I woke to the smell of something warm and buttery, and the low hum of a man's voice outside the window. It took a second to remember where I was. The couch, the ranch, the night in the barn that burned in the spaces between skin and silence. Weston had walked away, but the air still carried his heat. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and stretched. Boone thumped his tail without lifting his head, as if to say about time. Outside, the morning sun painted the hills gold. The wind was cooler than yesterday, the kind that slips down your collar and reminds you you're alive. I stepped into my boots, splashed water on my face, and followed the clinking of metal and low rumble of a familiar voice. Weston was by the chicken coop, tossing feed like a man born into rhythm. His flannel sleeves were rolled up again, and his hat sat lower today, shading most of his eyes. He didn't look up as he spoke. Didn't figure you'd sleep past 8. Boone usually wakes people by then. I guess he's warming up to me, I said, approaching. He's old, doesn't warm up to many. He glanced at me, just a flicker, then looked back to the feed bucket. I figured I could help, I offered. That got a raised brow. You ever fed livestock before, city boy? I grinned. I've hand-fed goats at a petting zoo. Weston huffed, close enough. He handed me a scoop of feed, his hand brushing mine again, light but deliberate. We moved from chickens to the goats, then toward the stable. Weston didn't say much, but I caught him watching me, not like last night. This was different. Softer, curious. At the fence, I tried to unhook a latch and struggled with the stubborn clasp. Weston stepped behind me and gently wrapped his hand over mine. Grip it like this, he murmured. His chest brushed my shoulder. His breath was warm near my ear. I nodded, managing to open the latch more from distraction than skill. We both stepped back at the same time, and I swear I caught a smile tug at his mouth before he turned away. You look different in the light, he said. I paused. Is that good or bad? He looked at me squarely. Good. You look real. After breakfast, Weston led me to the barn again, this time fully clothed, which my sanity appreciated. He pointed to a saddle on the railing. You want to ride out with me? Sure, just don't make me sit in front again. Weston smirked. Nah, you'll ride solo this time. But you're gonna learn to saddle up proper. He handed me a blanket and guided me through the steps. I fumbled, of course, but Weston didn't laugh. He stood close, steadying the cinch strap with his hands, adjusting the stirrup with careful precision. Like this, he said, moving beside me. Not too tight, not too loose. His hand grazed my hip. He didn't flinch, neither did I. We rode out slow, letting the horses find their pace. The land stretched wide and alive, fences in the distance, lowing cattle scattered across the ridge. The silence between us was different now, not tense, not unsure, it was safe. "Weston," I asked as we crested a hill. Last night, you said you don't do this often, let people in." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I've always held back. Grew up being told a man like me had to choose, be who you are or be who they'll accept. I picked safe." I let that sit. The wind moved over us like water. "I've never been with someone like you," I said. "Someone so grounded, so sure of who they are." He turned his horse slightly, so we rode side by side. "I'm not always sure," he admitted. "But when I look at you," he shook his head, "I feel like maybe I could be." At the top of the hill, he stopped. Below us, the land rolled out like a painting, golden fields, clusters of cattle, the sun dipping lower behind clouds. Weston dismounted first, then held out a hand. I took it and slid down, landing closer than I meant to. We stood there, hands still linked, not letting go. He looked at me, eyes serious now. "If you were mine," he said softly, "I'd make sure you never had to wander to feel seen." The words hit somewhere deep, somewhere honest. I didn't respond with words. I stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't a crash or a spark or a flood, it was a breath. A knowing. His hand rested at my jaw, thumb brushing just beneath my ear. My fingers curled into his flannel, grounding myself in the warmth of him. We didn't rush, didn't hide. Just stood in the wide open air, two men beneath the sky, kissing like the world had finally caught up to something we'd known since the moment we met. When we pulled apart, Weston didn't say anything. He just pressed his forehead to mine and exhaled slowly, like a man finally letting go of something heavy. And in that moment, I knew the trail hadn't led me here by accident. It had brought me home. By late morning, the sky had cleared completely. No more wind, no more heavy clouds, just pale blue stretching far and wide over the ridge, perfect hiking weather. I stood in the living room, folding the last of my gear back into my pack. Camera cables, my barely used drone. Boone watched from the rug, chin on his paws as if he could tell what leaving looked like. Weston sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee in silence. He hadn't said much since breakfast, just handed me a clean towel after my shower, nodded when I mentioned packing up. No protest. No offer. Just that same unreadable face, eyes hidden under the shadow of his hat. I zipped the main pocket shut and gave Boone one last scratch behind the ears. "Guess I'm ready." Weston stood. "I'll take you to the road." His voice was low, like gravel over something softer. He grabbed his hat, whistled once to the horses outside, and walked out without waiting. I followed. The trail was the same one we'd ridden 2 days ago, but it felt completely different now. Back then, I was lost, clumsy, buzzing with adrenaline and confusion. Now I knew every bend, every tree, every scent of sage and dust on the wind. We rode double again because that's how we started. Weston climbed up first, then offered his hand without a word. I swung up in front of him, settled into the saddle. His arms came around me for the reins, slow and deliberate, his chest warm at my back. The horse started forward, hooves thudding in that steady rhythm I'd come to love. We rode in silence. The birds were louder than us. So was the wind rustling through the scrub. Every minute that passed pulled us closer to the road, and further from whatever the hell this was. I finally broke. "So that's it?" I asked quietly. "I ride off and we pretend none of this happened." Weston didn't answer right away. The horse plodded forward, step by step, then his voice near my ear, "Unless you want more." My breath caught. "What?" "I don't chase people," he said, "but I won't stop you either. I meant what I said up on that hill. If you want more, stay." I didn't respond, couldn't. My hands gripped the horn of the saddle a little tighter, and my heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. Then Weston pulled the reins gently and brought the horse to a stop. In the silence that followed, I felt his hand slip from the leather to my waist, firm, warm, familiar. His lips brushed the side of my neck, barely a kiss, just enough to set my skin on fire. We sat like that for a long moment, unmoving. I leaned back into him, eyes closed. That was the answer. Without a word, Weston turned the horse around. We didn't speak, didn't need to. We rode slowly, not toward the road, but back toward the hills, the barn in the distance, the modest house with its porch light still faintly glowing in the daylight. Boone barked once when we came into view, like he'd been waiting to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. As we passed the fence, Weston slowed the horse and murmured, "You sure?" I turned my head just enough to look back at him. I was sure the minute I got on this horse the first time. He smiled then, small and quiet, but it reached his eyes. We rode the last stretch in that same silence, not empty, not uncertain, just full. Inside, I dropped my pack on the floor and kicked off my boots. Weston hung his hat on the rack and poured 2 glasses of water this time. He handed me one. Our fingers met again. This time, we didn't let go right away. "You'll have to learn to fix fences," he said. I smiled. "You'll have to learn what a gimbal is." He laughed, open, genuine, beautiful. I drank half the water, then set the glass down and stepped in closer, pressing my forehead to his chest. "I wasn't planning on this," I murmured. "Neither was I." He rested his hand on the back of my neck. "But I'm not walking away," I added. "Good," he said, and I swear I could hear the smile in his voice. Outside, the sun rose higher over the hills. Inside, everything was still. But somehow the world had shifted, and for once, I didn't feel like I was running anymore. I felt like I was home. I stayed a week, then another, and then I stopped counting. What started as a detour became a pause. What felt like a pause became a rhythm, and before I realized it, I wasn't a visitor anymore. I was just here. Our mornings began the same way now. The old kettle whistled, and Boone stretched across the rug like he paid rent. I'd sit at the kitchen table, rubbing sleep from my eyes while Weston moved around the stove in that sleepy cowboy way, quiet, grounded, coffee mug in hand before the sun had cleared the ridge. He always made 2 cups, one black, one with a splash of cream and honey mine. He never asked how I took it after the first time. "You're gettin' spoiled," he muttered once, sliding the mug in front of me. I grinned. "You like it." He didn't argue. We worked side by side during the day, though worked is generous in my case. Weston fixed fences like it was a second language. I mostly handed him tools, swatted flies, and tried not to curse every time I bent a nail. Still, he never seemed annoyed. He'd glance over from the other side of a post and say, "Try again, city boy," with a crooked smile that made me try harder. At night, we'd sit on the porch, watching the sun drag its golden light over the pasture, 2 drinks in hand and Boone snoring at our feet. We didn't need much. The quiet, the sky, each other. That was plenty. I still posted on social media. Only now it wasn't hiking peaks or filter-heavy campsites. It was sunrises over hay bales, barn cats asleep in feed sacks, and once, Weston laughing after Boone stole a glove straight off his hand. My followers noticed. "You seem calmer. Where is this ranch? Who's the flannel guy in the background of every video?" I didn't answer most of them. Some stories didn't need captions. Sometimes Weston would watch me filming something, a time lapse of the sky, or me setting the camera up on a fence post. He'd shake his head. "You still doing that city thing? You're in half my footage. I didn't sign no release. You did when you kissed me under a hilltop sky." He'd roll his eyes, but there'd be color in his cheeks when he walked away. There was one night, a couple weeks in, when a storm rolled through. Hard rain, low thunder. Everything smelled like soil and cedar and charged air. The power blinked once, then held. We were in the barn, closing up stalls, making sure the horses were dry. I slipped on a wet plank and landed squarely on my backside in the mud. Weston was at my side in 2 seconds, his face torn between concern and stifled laughter. "You all right?" "Fine," I groaned. "Just my pride." "You sure it wasn't the boots? They look too clean, suspiciously clean." "They're waterproof. They're a fashion statement." I threw a handful of straw at him. He let it hit his chest, then leaned down and pulled me up by both hands. Didn't let go for a long minute. Rain thudded on the roof. Boone barked from inside the house. Weston looked at me, hair damp, grin fading. "You stayin'?" he asked. I already had my answer. "Yeah," I said. "I'm stayin'." We started fixing the house up after that. Little things. Weston built shelves in the guest room, cleared out the old gear, and let me pick the paint color. I organized the kitchen, labeled jars, taught him what couscous was. We planted herbs in a box near the window, most of which he teased but secretly watered when I forgot. One afternoon, he came home with a simple wooden coat rack, held it up like he was offering me something sacred. Thought maybe we put this by the door, I blinked. Okay. He mounted it beside the window under the framed photo of his father. When he was done, he hung up his hat and boots underneath, then stepped back and looked at me. I understood. I unlaced my own boots, scuffed and broken in now, and placed them next to his. 2 pairs, different sizes, same dirt. Some nights, when he's already asleep, I lie there listening to the crickets outside and thinking about how all of this happened. It's not dramatic, it's not lightning. It's not some sweeping movie, it's quieter. It's me knowing how he takes his coffee. It's him knowing I hate getting out of bed before the sun. It's the way he keeps my hoodie on the back of the chair. The way I started wearing his flannel without asking. He still calls me city boy. I still can't fix a fence right, but he leans his shoulder into mine when we ride out in the morning. He sets 2 mugs out before I even open my eyes. He waits for me to come inside before he turns out the porch light. That's love, I think. That's what it looks like here. Tonight, the porch light glows golden against the dark. Boone is snoring by the door, one paw twitching. A half-drunk glass of whiskey sits beside Weston's hand. He's thumbing through an old paperback, one foot hooked lazily under the other. I stand in the doorway, hoodie zipped, heart full. This ain't where I thought I'd end up, but it's the only trail I ever want to walk again. Have you ever ended up somewhere unexpected and found exactly what you didn't know you were searching for? Tell me in the comments, was it a person, a place, a moment that changed your path? I'd love to hear your story. And if this one touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes in slow love and open skies. Because sometimes the best trail is the one you never planned to take.